In this video, we'll demonstrate another way in which diagnostics generated by the Express software can be integrated with test results from the ATEasy Test Executive. Specifically, we are going to export the Express Diagnostics and then use the Express Runtime Authoring tool to create the messages that appear in the ATEasy Fault Analysis module when a fault is identified. Let's take a closer look. Here is a diagnostic study that was created for the same HTML demo UUT that was used for the first two videos in this series. On the right is a graphic representation of the UUT with a series of tabbed panels that are used to define and customize the diagnostics. On the left is the diagnostic flow table, a fault tree-like representation of the diagnostics. This tree is used to represent both the procedures for mapping individual fault signatures to sets of suspected failures and any manual troubleshooting procedures that might be needed to further isolate faults indicated by the test program. The first node in this tree tells us that any fault signatures in which test 1.4 fails will isolate to the R2 resistor. If we click on this fault group, notice that both the fault group and the test sequence leading up to that fault group are both highlighted in the tree. Also, in the graphic representation of the design, the different components have been color-coded to reflect their diagnostic status. Here, the isolated failure, resistor R2, is highlighted in red. Now, we will export the diagnostics using the DiagML export. DiagML is an XML-based format that is used to transfer data between diagnostic applications. The DiagML options dialog is used to specify what diagnostic and design data we wish to include in the exported file. For this example, the only data that we'll add to the default settings is an attribute value for each test in Express that contains the test ID used within ATEasy. Once the DiagML export is completed, we'll open the Runtime Authoring tool to prepare the data for ATEasy. This plugin option, when installed, will appear on the Data Converters panel. To set up the converter, we'll first enter the ATEasy project name, and then we'll specify that the test IDs will be derived from the attribute that we included in our DiagML export from Express. Finally, we'll click on the Create Conditions File button and specify the file name and location. The exported conditions file contains all of the diagnostic information from Express that is needed for the fault analysis messaging within ATEasy. Within ATEasy, we can import this information by invoking the conditions editor and then opening the file we just created in the Express Runtime Authoring tool. Once the appropriate conditions file has been selected, notice that the list of conditions is now populated with all fault groups that can be isolated by the Express diagnostics. Now, we're ready to start the test program in ATEasy. Notice that the status column indicates the outcome pass or fail for each test as the program is running until it is completed and ATEasy identifies that a failure does exist in the design. These results are analyzed by invoking the ATEasy Fault Analysis module. Displayed on this dialog is the name of the fault group from the Express Diagnostics as well as the repair instructions for that fault group. In this case, the repair instructions indicate that the technician should replace item R2-1.2K. The fault group number provides traceability from the fielded diagnostics back to the source diagnostic engineering analysis. This helps facilitate diagnostic upgrades over time. For UUTs with large test sequences, the advantages of automatically populating test conditions should be obvious, as should the value of taking the same data used to perform diagnostic analysis for contract compliance and reusing it in the production and maintenance environment.